Buzzings, and welcome back to the 2B podcast with me, your host, B. Now, on today's episode, we're spilling some juicy tea, and I'm really stoked to get into it as we've been breaching the topic of sex work. That's right, my amazing guest is a current sex worker and has worked in every part of the industry. So this is going to be a no-holds bar of us getting into the stigma associated with it. We're going to talk about the safety aspects with the profession, as well as what it's like to be in a relationship with someone who is a sex worker currently, and how that goes on top of the typical relationship dynamic. Now, I'm very excited, and without further ado, here is the episode. This episode, we are talking about the sex industry. I'm very excited to have my guest, Mel, from Down Under, to talk about what it's like to work in this industry, as well as some of the taboos that go into it. Welcome, Mel. I'm so happy to have you.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
I'm very excited. So, Mel, as I mentioned, you are a sex worker. So before we get into all the details of that, could you tell us a little bit about how you got into the sex industry, what led you to be in that industry, and what drew you to it?
So I started in the sex industry when I was 15. I was homeless at the time, and I used to hang around outside 4 and 5 star hotels for businessmen to sleep with them in exchange for a room. Then when I got my own place, when I turned 18, I started working in strip clubs. And then when I was 21, I started working in brothels.
And Mel, what are some of the common misconceptions when it comes to sex work, and how do you address them in your day-to-day lives?
There's a huge misconception that all sex workers are drug addicts. In Australia, 1/3 of sex workers are university students. There's a lot of people think that we're automatically sluts in our day-to-day life, whereas I know a lot of sex workers, the only sex they have is at work. Mm-hmm. Also, there's the misconception that we don't have any standards, whereas I've found we're some of the pickiest people, we'll shut down guys in an instant.
And Mel, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's one of the biggest reasons I wanted to do the show, is because there are so many misconceptions when it comes to sex workers. And a lot of people, may look down on that, because especially in North America, where, sex is seen as something bad and something, religion has taken that over. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And that's a statistic that I didn't even know, the fact that a lot of people who are sex workers actually have a university or college degree. So it's not that these people are uneducated. But the other thing is, being a sex worker is one of the oldest jobs there is it not? It's always going to be around.
Yeah, definitely. There's all types of sex work too, which is something people don't really realize. There's what most people are familiar with is survival sex work, which is a drug addict or a homeless person on the street selling sex for very small amounts of money. But then that goes all the way through to high-end escorts who are charging over $1,000 for an.
Wow. Yeah, of course. Now, Mel, let's talk about some of the safety aspects when it comes to being a sex worker, because that is the biggest scary part of this industry, is because in a lot of places, it is still a criminal activity. I know that in Australia specifically, police can get very intense, and we'll get into that when we talk about some of the amazing work that you've been doing to decriminalize sex work. But talk about some of the safety issues that you've had to deal with maybe in the past. I know that now you're at a brothel, so it might be a little bit different. What are the precautions that you have to take for your own safety?
I've been really, really lucky. I've never had any major issues, but a lot of it, especially as an escort, where you're walking into someone else's house or hotel room, is act like you're in control of the space. Don't falter. Don't let them think that you're scared or nervous of something going wrong, because the moment you do that, the moment you show weakness, it allows them to think of you as almost like prey. So
yeah, and that can be very scary. Now, as I mentioned, so you're in Australia, and there's parts of Australia, of course, is very separated. Now, I know there are some parts that do have sex work decriminalized and other parts don't. And you've told me how in some areas where it's not decriminalized, police can take very extreme measures. Talk a little bit about that.
In South Australia, the laws for sex work date back to the 1930s. So that means police can respond to escorts ads and then entrap them, rock up, entrap them into doing a transaction and then charge them. They can come into a brothel at any time while you're working, not even give you a chance to get dressed, and sit you down and question you, take copies of your ID. And if you're working on the streets, it's even more dangerous. They can arrest you simply for having condoms on you.
Wow, that is... And the reason that this is important is because a lot of people think of Australia as a very advanced country, and it is, but the fact that police can still take such brutal measures, and as you said, they don't even wait a lot of times for the person to get dressed, which is I think it's absolutely just disgusting for them to be able to do that, to continue to do that in the age that we're living in right now. Mel, tell me about some of the work that you've been doing in order to support decriminalization for sex work and support sex workers for their safety and ensuring that they have the same rights that other people in a working environment do.
So I started working in decriminalization back in 2011. I got involved with my local sex worker peer network, who were at the time running a massive decriminalization campaign, and I was immediately interested. So I started out just doing things like painting on banners and drawing up flyers, and then it moved on to protesting outside of Parliament House, and then I started doing media interviews, helping them draft up like different aspects of what sex workers want when it comes to decriminalization.
Mm-hmm. And so what are some of those things that you are actively seeking for in terms of the rights that you want sex workers to have in Australia?
Basically, we want sex work to be treated like any other job. So there's no specific laws surrounding it, that it's completely legal, that just like any other job, that the only regulation is you have to be 18 and you have to be doing it out of your own free will, like any other job.
I agree. And I love that you do that. And through doing that, Mel, you actually met your partner. Tell us that story of how you met your partner, who is also a sex worker, how you met him while being an activist for these rights.
So it was International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers, and there was a protest going on around the world. Every hour, a different person around the world would make a speech on why violence against sex workers needs to end. And on that day, my now husband happened to be the person in our city doing the speech on the steps of Parliament. And I happened to be the person that was doing media interviews. So we met on that day and hit it off, and then actually didn't see each other for the next 10 years, or no, about 7 years. We didn't see each other, and then we bumped into each other, and a week later we were living together.
It's amazing. I love it. So serendipitous of how you met. But as you mentioned, your partner is also a sex worker. So let's dive into your relationship specifically. How do you deal with some of the emotional toll that can come from being a sex worker, as well as, people can get very controlling over each other's bodies in a relationship. So do you face those issues, and how do you approach it?
We're pretty lucky. We're non-monogamous, so
Do you mind explaining what that means to some of the listeners, because I know it's a bit of a newer term?
Okay, so us non-monogamy means that we have other partners, both romantic and sexual, in our relationship, and that we're 100% open and honest with each other about those partners. We don't hide anything, so there's no cheating, there's no jealousy. I mean, there's still a little tinge of jealousy, but that happens in friendships. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and you're so right in terms of, I love that you mentioned that, because that's the thing, is radical honesty within your relationship sounds like has been kind of the savior, and you don't necessarily have those issues. But you're right. Whether someone's a sex worker or not, there will always be, some sort of jealousy issues that can happen, whether it's with friends or just people that you hang out with in a relationship. You're totally right. And I'm so glad that it's working out great for you. Now, what about your family? How has your family, when did they find out that you were a sex worker, and how did they initially take it versus how they're dealing with it now?
My family found out I was a sex worker when I was 18, when I started stripping, and they were really supportive. Then when I moved into full service work, my mum acted like nothing happened, like that it doesn't exist. But my dad has always been really, really supportive of me.
Great.
Like, really supportive.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that must mean a lot as well for, who you are as a person, and making sure you take those safety precautions for yourself, because you have, you're surrounding yourself with people who are very supportive with your career, which I love. And that's fantastic, which I know that not everyone as lucky as you are when they're in the sex industry. A lot of times people can lose family and not have partners, because it can be a little bit tolling, right?
No, it is a very rare thing to have a supportive partner and family. Most people get one or the other.
Yeah, very true. And I'm so happy that you have both. Now, let's get into talk about your clients a little bit. Now, talk about the kind of relationship, because now you're at a brothel and you've kind of done all the different aspects of sex work. Now you're in a brothel. I know you have pretty close relationships with all your clients. Discuss what that actually is like, and talk about the fact that when you see your clients, it's not, just sex the way that people think.
Yeah, so a lot of the clients I have as regulars are amazing. They're just everyday guys. Some of them are in academia, some of them are in trades, some of them are on government benefits, but a lot of them want someone to talk to. Mm-hmm. At least half of my bookings, half of them is taken up with talking.
Wow. Which a lot of people don't expect, right? And I think this is the other reason that this is so important to me to bring up in terms of sex work, is because people come to you because they just want, someone to talk to, someone to give them, some intimacy, whether it's actually physical or not. Like you mentioned, it's a lot of it's conversation. And especially since COVID has happened, we have so much isolation. So is that what I'm hearing? A sense of these men, especially who have been a lot of the times in the last couple of years, especially been ostracized by society, where, it can be a little bit dangerous to be a man. Is that where I'm hearing, where they just want someone to kind of comfort them and be there with them?
Yeah, definitely. And they've all got things they want to talk about. Some people, it's really inane and boring everyday today stuff. And some of them, you're a psychologist. They want to talk about really heavy things. And it's hard to say, oh, I can't really deal with that. So you kind of do your best and hope you don't mess them up more than they already are.
Yeah, very, very true. Now, have clients ever asked you anything that you weren't comfortable with? And how do you approach a conversation where maybe you don't want to do something that they're requesting, or has that happened?
I'm pretty open with what I do. I give clients, like, on my ads, it states the things that I do. Mm-hmm. So I don't really get clients asking me for things that I don't do. However, if they've already made the booking and haven't specifically asked for something, then if they come into the booking and say, oh, I want anal, I won't do it because I haven't had time to prep for it.
Right. Gotcha. And that sounds like a great kind of way to approach it. Now, as I keep saying, is you're currently at a brothel. Now, what's the difference between working at a brothel compared to, the people that may be soliciting specific ads or going on the internet and kind of doing it for themselves? How does, for someone who's never been to a brothel, how would you describe that experience?
So the difference between escorting and a brothel is a brothel does everything for you. They run your ads, they provide your supplies, so your condoms, your lube, your sea sponges, whatever else you need. They provide the location, they provide security if they have security. If not, they provide a receptionist. So they cover everything. So they do take around half of what you make, but you spend a fair amount on overheads when you're working by yourself anyway. So
yeah, I bet. And like you mentioned, there's also the safety aspect and location that comes into it, right? That the brothel provides that others wouldn't necessarily, which is, great to hear.
And also clients know about the brothels. They know where the brothels are, so they know they can go there, whereas trying to look through a bunch of different ads to find a girl that you want can sometimes be quite daunting.
And with your brothel, do they kind of negotiate your pay, or do you still negotiate and kind of tell them? How does that work?
So they have a base rate of pay, which covers a standard booking, which is a massage, oral sex, and sex for a specific time period. And then on top of that, we charge extras, which we make up the prices for.
Gotcha. And this is a bit of a cheeky question, but, with all the conversation of quiet quitting and all the differences that are happening in corporate all over the world, how are you finding, working in the sex industry as all of this stuff in corporate is going on? And, do you have the same kind of quiet quitting mentality, or are you getting tired of the industry? Tell me what that's like.
I love the industry. I absolutely love it. It gives so much freedom. Like, I can choose to, because I don't work in the town I live in, so I travel to go to work. The town I live in is too small to have any sort of sex industry. But I can choose to work for a month straight, or I can choose to work for 2 days out of a month. And there's no repercussions on me for that.
I love that. Your own boss. Now, Mel, I know that a couple of years ago, you did have a bit of a health situation which impacted you. But as you said, you really love the industry and you continue to be in it. Now, is there anything that's going to stop you, or do you is your plan, continuing to work in this industry that you love and making sure that it is safe going forward for other people that are entering it?
I'll work for as long as I can, and then I'll probably move into the peer support aspect of it. So I had a stroke back in 2017, which now means that if I walk long distances, I need to use a cane. I'm all right around the house or around a brothel or whatever where it's short distances.
Right.
But yeah, that's been a bit of a change for me.
Yeah, I bet. And I mean, this is the other reason, when it comes to decriminalization, is for someone like you who's had those health issues, right? It's being able to file some kind of disability or something so that you're acknowledging that you have a job, you're still making money. It's just currently, you were going through a situation. You mentioned you want to go into more of kind of like this peer support role. What do you mean by that? Is there, I don't know if this is even a thing, but is there, the head of a brothel kind of position? Is that what you're aiming for? Or what are you thinking?
So what we have is, and they're all around the world, is they're peer support networks. So they're run by sex workers or former sex workers. No brothel owners can be a part of them. They're strictly run for sex workers by sex workers, and they offer things like training and support. They run the programs to inform other girls and men about dangerous clients. They provide equipment, so condoms, lube, etc., to private escorts and street-based escorts. They normally run a needle exchange.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, those are very, very needed services everywhere. And that sounds amazing that you kind of aiming for that. So in terms of that work that you've been doing, in terms of decriminalization that your partner has also been doing, what are the next steps and what do you really wish that, the government would hear, and kind of when are you hoping that this deadline for decriminalization all over Australia will be achievable?
Well, we've just had the second state in Australia pass decriminalisation laws. So hopefully the rest of the country follows suit. There's at least 3 states that have decriminalisation bills either tabled before Parliament or are working on tabling before Parliament. So it's just a matter of seeing how it goes.
Yeah. Well, I hope that it all goes amazing, and safety is so important, and this is a job just like any other, and people who are in this industry need to be protected. And again, why it's so important. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Mel, you have been so amazing. Now, is there anything that you want to mention that I didn't cover in terms of the sex industry? Any advice you may have for people that are entering it, and also how they can stay safe and succeed in the industry?
If you're looking at entering the sex industry, one thing I'd say is look for your local peer support network. Most cities around the world will have them, from third world cities to developed nations. Most places have them, especially in places where sex work is illegal. They're a great resource to help you get your feet, and they'll help you with everything from writing ads to getting supplies to anything you need to know.
That's amazing. Mel, thank you so much. You have been absolutely amazing. Thank you for being a guest on the Tea With Me podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.